to I think it's can't keep up now, our 6th webinar. So we've had 5 fantastic webinars. The standard has been awesome, and it's great to see some returning people as well. So thanks for coming back, Claire. Thanks for coming back, Lewis. And I think today we've got a new face with Connor as well. So I think when Connor gets in, welcome to your first webinar, Connor. I hope you got a chance to look at some of the playback on some of the other ones as well in the meantime. So today, our last webinar, we had the fantastic Sergio Gonzalez Bercial. Have I said it right again, Juan?
Lara Bercial.
Lara Bercial, sorry. Yeah, I'm getting confused with your surname as well as Sergio's. So apologies, my friend. And today we are very lucky to have Amy Price, who is going to talk all things gamification and what can we learn from computer games for our coaching. So I'm really excited, especially having a 9-year-old daughter who likes a bit of computer games, to see how I can implement a lot of the learning from today into my coaching practice. So without further ado, Juan, do you want to give a bit of background and introduce our fantastic guest today, Amy?
I think she's going to run away, mate. You just used the G word. She's about to run away. Anyway, video game design, digital video game design, to be more precise. Easily confused. As Simon joined us as well. Yeah, welcome back, everyone. Great to see you. Great to see that Claire has finally moved to Paris. She's actually in Paris right now. The joke is never going to get old, Claire. So we got 3 more of these. Still going to make the same joke. Now, seriously, it's great to have you all back. Absolute treat to have Amy on. She's going to tell us a little bit about her background in a minute, and then we're going to dive right in. So from me, as I normally sort of try to get some feedback around your post-webinar email with all the resources. Please keep those coming so we can make it as relevant as possible. There'll be loads of thoughts and bits that Amy will be mentioning throughout her presentation, and I'm sure there'll be loads of questions and reflections and stuff that will bring some examples as well. So I'll try to include those as I normally do. And yeah, I think we'll just go straight in. Is that strike 1 for Trevor, Amy? Is that strike 1?
I just love the fact you've mentioned that G word in the first intro. It set me up perfectly now for the webinar.
Amy, you can blame Juan, because if I look at my timetable, which he presented me with, he has Thursday the 25th February, UK time, 2 p.m, gamification 2.0.
I did set him up. I did set him up.
Okay.
That's all on me.
Look, guys, thanks for having me. I won't waffle on for too long. I want to try and present some ideas, probably bust some myths around gamification and give some clarity on what this is, and then how it can help the players or the students that you work with. And then we'll have some chat afterwards, and you guys can start to chuck some reflections in the mix, and we can just have a chat about what we think about it. So my background's football, so apologies if I keep referring back to football. I mean, you guys are probably from lots of different sports. I know we have got at least one other football person, which is cool. So, but this concept can be applied to any sport, could be individual, team, could even be like last webinar, we were speaking about how it can be used in the classroom even. So if I share my screen with you now, so I always start with Mario and Sonic, because as a 90s kid, it was like my 2 favorite games. And it still is, I always play Mario Kart and stuff like that. So I think if we can try and think back to some of the games we used to play or ones we currently play to try and make sense of this. So ultimately, I suppose it's like the thing what captured my attention when I first started studying this in 2013 was like, why do people just love playing these games? Like, they spend so much money on buying new video games and consoles, and then they spend ages playing on them, hours and hours and hours, and they keep coming back and they keep coming back, and they get better quickly. And then I was starting to think, well, how's that related to coaching? You know, because the kids I'm coaching, I wonder how I can get them like improving so quickly and wanting to keep coming back. And then I suppose the big thing there is and that's without a coach or a teacher. So I'm like, how is this happening? There's no one coaching these kids or even adults when they're playing video games. Like it's just crazy. So basically what happened was I was studying for a master's degree at the time. And it was a point in the degree where they were like, okay, well, you've got to come up with a research question for your dissertation. And I was like, well, I coach, like, and I know I want to do it something related to my coaching practice. And I love games-based coaching. I was like blinded at that time by games. I thought it was the answer to everything. I would never do a drill. I've learned from that. So I was obsessed and I was like, right, let me strip it back. And I went onto Google and I just typed in, what is a game? And then I didn't realize naively that loads of all the results from Google was basically video game stuff. It wasn't coaching or sport, what I thought it would be. And then I was like, oh my God, yeah, that's what I'm interested in. How, like, I've never thought about that. And then basically this guy here in the middle of your screen on the left, he was he still is, he's the god around this area. Like he's done so much in terms of, from a learning point of view, looking at the design of video games and sort of making suggestions like, why isn't this happening in school? Why aren't we using those learning principles in school? Like, it's crazy. What, like, he talks about assessment and he talks about like systems thinking and all of these principles. And I'm like, God, yeah, why aren't we? And if you can get, and he's got lots of books, but these two here are probably the two that inspired me the most. If you're interested in his work and his early work, he got I think it was 30, might be 30 different features of game design. And he was like, any good game has all of these features. And I was like, bloody hell, that's a lot of features. And so basically my master's project was, how do I make sense of this from a coaching point of view? I did an action research with my under 9 girls. And I just tried to use those features in my coaching practice every week. And I wanted the experience of those girls to feel like a video game experience. Luckily, in the book on the left, his more earlier work, he didn't use 30. He actually reduced it down to 13, which is much more manageable, but still very conceptual. And it was hard to make sense of. This is, hopefully it plays.
Yeah, a fair statement.
So, I was on a webinar with him in 2020. And it was like the best day of my life, because as you can imagine, I've been like in awe of him for ages. Like, oh my God, I'm on a webinar. You can't see me because my camera didn't work, but I promise I was there in that webinar. And there's a little clip from something he was talking about.
Yeah, a fair statement.
See, I think that's crucial about, one thing about human beings is they learn best by when they're having an experience, but not from any old experience. They learn when that experience has an action they have to take. They have a goal, and they care. They are effectively care about the goal. So in a video game, the designer has certain goals that are the designer's goals, and the player must adopt them. But the designer knows the player is not going to adopt those goals if he or she doesn't care about it. If something doesn't, you have to make it matter, and you have to make them understand and be able to put those goals in their own story.
I love that. You've got to make it matter. How do you make the goals matter for the players? And through the game design, they begin to create their own goals by redesigning the game as well. We start with our design, but they can redesign it as it goes on. So this is the journey, a real quick snapshot. 2013 was that Masters Action Research project. Let me just try and see how to make sense of James G's work. Eventually, in 2017, with lots of coaching and lots of thinking and lots of talking to my trusted mates, I kind of like produced this model of 5 principles that a coach or a teacher could use when designing games. And that was called a digital video games approach, not gamification. And we'll go on to how that's different. Then 2019, there was like more detail around the why behind this. And actually it's not about enjoyment. It's not about making stuff fun. It's actually really, it's very psych heavy. So it's actually about understanding and learning. And being able to solve problems and being aware of what I'm thinking as I'm solving the problem. That's what good games do. They get people to be aware and in control of their thought process as they're doing it. Imagine if you had like players in your team that were like thinking about how to solve the problem as they're solving it on the pitch. That's such a high level thought process. And I think we can help kids from a real young age with this through those game design principles. 2020, I wanted to know what coaches thought. Are you coaching this? Is this something you coach? Metacognition is thinking about thinking and problem solving something that you do? And if so, how do you do it? 2021, I wanted to know how the coaches think. So I actually asked the coaches to, observe responses from players. So observe how a player solves a problem and tell me how you think about their game understanding. And then in 2021, how the players think. And I'm still doing that now over a longitudinal study. I want to know how do players approach and solve problems. So in a game, like if there's a problem, like how does the player even tackle that problem? What is the thought process? So as you can see, it isn't about fun. It is about game understanding and getting kids to be really thoughtful. Oh, this little thing up here, this is me on my journey of this, getting stuck in my banana skins, because there's been times on this process here, by the way, where I've been baffled. And I feel like with this stuff, unless you've got clarity of the why, if you're going to use this, unless you know why, you might get stuck like I did. So I guess it comes back to, you've got that coaching toolbox. This is just one way of coaching which does X, but you've probably got another way which does Y. It's just knowing which one to use. And then this is the slide. So I'm on a bit of a mission to just break down this myth around the gamification stuff. So on the left is digital video games approach. So it's about learning to learn, helping kids with those learning skills. It's about getting them to be strategic. How can they plan their next move? How can they set the opposition a problem? How can they detect the information they need from the game to enable them to move on? It's about not just progressing through the game, but monitoring that progression, being reflective in the game of why did that work? Why did that not work? And thinking about my thinking as I'm doing that. So on the flip, gamification, it's about productivity, getting stuff done, people wanting to do it, being engaged. It's motivation. It's getting some rewards to show my progress. Like I've got this medal or this badge, and it's just also for sustaining attention. So from a kid's point of view, you might have better attention levels from some kids if you use it more of a gamification concept. So you can see they're slightly different. They probably look similar sometimes, but that's probably for a whole new webinar. As I say, both are important tools. Both are important depending on what your goals are. And then this slide just outlines the whole stuff behind it. So can we outwit our opponent? That's game understanding. When I'm outwitting my opponent, can I be planning my next move? Can I be finding that information I need that's going to help me to make my next move? Not just sort of be passive or wait for the coach to tell me. And can I set problems for the opposition, not just solve them, but with my solution, can that cause them a problem? Can I be on the front foot with my solutions? Being strategic, so when and why might I do something in a game? When might it be tweaked? When might I tweak something, and when might I repeat something? And the players knowing that and making sense of that. And also like knowing when practice needs to just slow down and my thought process needs to slow down so I can think and be strategic. But then when I need to speed up with my thought process, when actually the game that I'm playing in is more fast paced. And then hopefully I'm then relying on more automatic decisions. We do need to slow practice down sometimes, and video games do that. They allow the kids to dictate pace, with the pause button and integration of superpowers. It just slows their thought process down, and that's really important. Here are the principles on the left of the actual approach. So what is the mission? So no learning objectives that are technical or tactical. So imagine that going into a session, say you worked in an academy and you're turning up and you're not doing a session based around something in the game. So you're not doing playing out from the back. You're not doing dribbling. Like, you don't have that. So you actually, your objectives are the metacognitive game skills, which we spoke about. Planning your next move, finding out information, problem setting. That's what you're working on. So it's a complete flip away from technical and tactical, but they're doing the technical and tactical anyway. And using the pause button. So actually, as the coach, I'm not intervening. I'm not saying when we have to stop. The kids have that option. And they can cheat. They can opt to like pause and then cheat. They can opt to pause and then change the game, or pause and then get a clue from a coach, which could be a coaching opportunity. You then have levels. So actually, like, look at what dictates complexity in your sport. For me, it's time and space. How can I manipulate time and space to create simple to complex problems for kids to solve as they reach their mission? Earning a superpower. So this is actually, some might see that as differentiation, but it's not. So it's actually about, how can the game give me an opportunity to be more effective for a short period of time? It's like Sonic's fast feet. Doesn't last forever, but it's brilliant when you get it. But it doesn't last forever. So one, I have to find the fast feet token, or I have to find the superpower. Then I have to use the superpower. It's strategic. I might not need it, so I might not bother finding it. But it's great to get the kids to be thinking about whether they need it and how to use it. Saving progress. So how often would we start from scratch with a topic that the kids have already learned? But actually with this, it's like, well, I finished the game on level 4. So when we come back to the same game next week, I'm going to start from level 4. Like, so it's like, I'm not going to buy FIFA and only ever play it once. I'm going to buy it and probably play it loads and loads of times and keep coming back to it. And you can save progress across sessions, or you can save progress in the game itself as well. And you can be creative with that. Here's a great, well, on the right-hand side is a great example from Sporticus, who's on Twitter. You might have seen him, where he was testing it out in cricket in the school that he worked in. So you can go onto his blog, you can actually have a look at his ideas, his game design ideas, and his reflections on how it went. So I definitely recommend that. He's done a lot of research into what it is and why he would do it. And then on the ECB website, they did a little, this was hilarious because I had to coach cricket. So they basically videoed me coaching cricket with some kids in the community. So that was a challenge for me to learn some stuff, but there's loads of videos on their website, which basically breaks it down. So there's a video on pausing, there's a video on missions, there's a video on level ups, superpowers with the kids, like real life. This is just literally the intro video. There was this kind of blend of, or collision, I'd say, really, between virtual world and physical world. How do we help the players to become good learners? Interestingly, in video games, the problems that you face start off really simple and they eventually become more complex. What you have helped them to do is to get those metacognitive skills. What we get to do with this approach as coaches is be pedagogically creative, and the possibilities are endless. It's the iCoach Cricket website. It's free. You just create a free account and you can look at those videos. This is me trying it out with my last football team before I took on a coach development role. And so this is a game design that I used. And this is a little video of one of the boys, he's only 7, trying to use one of the pauses. And literally the practice has just started. It's like 2 minutes into the practice.
Free, Jake.
Oh, Jake. VAR.
Amy, are you right foot then?
Play from Isaac. Oh, so it's a start, right? He didn't use the pause particularly well. They only had one pause for the whole 90 minutes. So they've got one cheat, one change, one clue, one challenge. And he's used his cheat in the first 90 seconds and he's not consulted anyone on his team and he's just gone and used it. And there's another pitch behind that you can't see. It was a 14 tournament. So he literally used it against the first opposition. But I'm not surprised, right? Because in school, how often do kids get the opportunity to use a pause button? They're not used to it. They're just waiting for the teacher to tell them what's next and what to do and when to stop it. So, but it's good. It's something to build into practice over time. Imagine if we could do this with the under 8s and then by the time they're in under 16s, imagine how on the ball they're going to be. In this particular one, I said about levels before. Time, space and numbers are the 3 factors for me in football that I use to manipulate levels. In here, you can see it's numbers. And we can show you a website later with some more game designs where I've used space to also create levels. So this is a great slide from Jack at London Irish, which he posted on Twitter. And he was making the point around there's so many tools to use in your coaching, but it's just knowing what they're for and when to use them at the right time. And it's very cliche, isn't it? But it's great. It's so true. It's like, what's in your toolbox? Do you know how to use each tool and when to use each tool? So obviously our one we're talking about now is the metacognition stuff, not fun, but fun's a byproduct and engagement's a byproduct. So I just wanted to ask that question, now you've listened to me for a little bit, if one of your colleagues was considering this approach and they asked for your advice, what would you say? And these are some of the things I might say. It's don't get drawn into the excitement of something new and shiny, because I think we can all be guilty of that sometimes because it excites us. We're just going to keep using it. Approach the concept with skepticism and curiosity, because everything I've said is based upon theory, but there's a real lack of empirical research to support the effectiveness of this approach, because I'm still in a process of collecting research and evidence to understand whether what I think it does actually does, because it is still quite new. So just knowing why you're using it as well, taking it back to that example, I'm in this academy, for example, and the head of coaching comes over and is like, what's this? What are you working on? Oh, planning ahead, problem setting. They're like, yeah, but what about the game? What game focus are you at? So you've got to be able to have those conversations, haven't you, and explain why you're not working on playing out from the back, for example. Just try and read the original research papers to get clarity on the theory behind it is my other bit of advice. And also consider all options. It's not the only way of doing stuff. Here's some great bits to look at. Any of James Paul G's work is just fascinating. He's a philosopher and he's very abstract, but his vision of learning and how that works is fascinating. He's not very applied, but this is where this stuff links in and provides more of an applied concept. Sporticus is another person, Martin Keel at ECB. They're 2 examples of people who get it and have been, using it. And there's more out there, by the way. There's more people you could tap into. But yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to show you. But I really wanted to get your thoughts because we've got a small group. So I think it's a good opportunity just for you to just have a little bit of a discussion between us.
Cheers, Aim. Absolutely brilliant. We've done quite a few of this in the last couple of months, and every time, although you change it every time I just end up with quite a few notes here. I'll go first if that's okay. I'm going to be selfish on this one. Planning for it. So you just mentioned your example from playing out the back, let's say, and you pick out problem solving if you want to pick up one of them. How do you go about it? How do you go about it, that conversation that you just mentioned with the head of the academy, where he or she comes and goes, well, what we're looking at and what's the purpose of it? And you sort of, you know how to answer that, and you know why you're using it, and you can relate it with the game, perhaps with a principle of the game.
Yeah.
How do you go about that?
So where I've tried to do it before, I wouldn't just turn up and do it. There'll be priming that happens before, over maybe quite a long period, months or weeks, where it's just conversations in passing with the influencers. Just be like, oh yeah, like I wonder that, how do we coach? How do we get kids to be more aware of their problem solving? How do we get kids to, prime them, drop it in? I personally wouldn't necessarily, unless I was the gaffer, I probably wouldn't just come in with this approach and expect people to buy in. So I think a little bit of priming. I think when you're doing it, if you work with another coach, which I did before, I think we both need to be on the same page. We need to plan that together. We need to get it, because it, with the element of pausing, it means that actually the game is more they're in more control than we are. So we have to be okay with giving up a little bit more control than we usually. So we have to make sure we're both okay with that. And also, the way the game is designed and how it looks to start with could be really different by minute 60 of your session, because that team might be on level 3, that team might be on level 5, that player might be using a superpower, or that team might have decided to pause and then change something in the game design, like moving. I'll tell you what, when I was that group of under 8s, different practice, but one of the boys, I'm going to change the game. I was like, okay. He said, yeah, basically, because it was, I'll show you it. It was, I've said this story quite a few times. Hopefully you've never heard it, because it was the most fascinating thing I've ever heard from a 7-year-old in my whole life. But basically, we was doing this game here. Hopefully you can see. So this is a website that we'll share with you with lots of game designs on it. We were doing this game. So imagine the left channel, the circle in the left channel. This is the boy. He was against the square, but in reality, the square was unbelievable. And the square was like bossing that 1v1. And actually, in this particular game, there wasn't a goalkeeper either on either team. So it was easy. There's lots of shooting going on. They're only 7. And basically, he goes, I'm changing the game. I'm going to change the angle of the goal, so that, because this boy keeps using his strong foot, so what would that be? His right foot to score. I'm changing the angle. So actually, he's now going to keep hitting the side netting. I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. Like, that is so clever, because he's set the opposition. He's set him a problem now. He's now going to have to either use his left foot, or he's going to have to pass to someone else. So I'm not sure why I went off on that tangent, but the point was, get your co-coach on board with you, because you're going to lose, like, the game will look different and we're going to lose some control over it, and we have to be okay with that. And then if someone asks, yeah, but what are you working on from a football point of view? Like, what element of football are you working on? For me, it's everything. Because in a video game, you're not going to turn on Sonic the Hedgehog and go, right, I'm going to practice my jumping and turning today. You don't, do you? Just play the game. Depending on the problem, the level, the mission, you end up trying different stuff, different skills. James G calls them skills as strategies. You just use whatever skills required to execute the strategy that you've decided. But in a video game, there's so many strategies you'll use in such a short space of time. I'd just say they're working on everything. Everything. And if you're at the older age groups and winning is maybe very important within your environment, we're learning how to win as well within this, by the way. You know, so it's relevant for any age.
Yeah, that's cool. I love that. Anyone else wants to jump in? Just open your mics. Feel free. I've got hundreds otherwise. Trev, you're on.
What, Amy, so like, given the example of leveling up, how could you sort of give an example of that in a game? What will constitute leveling up, and when might that happen, and who decides who levels up? Is that the young people decide the rules for it, or is it something you set in the problem?
Great question. I think it's really important that the coach, the game designer, sets that out from the start. This isn't just a free-for-all of kids just make up their game. this is a game that you've designed. So in this instance, if you can see the mission is to unlock your team. So there's no football language in that. It's no like dribbling, or it's just to unlock. So you can see the start point. So level 0 for both teams is we're locked in channels. It's a game, but we're locked in channels. So I've tried to use space as the factor to make problems more complex. So to start with, I believe this is a simple version of this game on level 0, because actually it's a 1v1, or it's a 2v2, or it's a 1v1. If we then play the game for 10 minutes, we might then bring everybody in after 10 minutes and just ask what the score is. Like, who's winning? Oh, Reds are winning 2-0. Okay, great. Reds, you're leveling up. Okay, well, what does that mean? Well, you can choose one person from your team who isn't locked in anymore. Yeah, so a lot of people will say, well, then that's making it easier. But it's not about easier and harder. It's about simple and complex. So actually, by unlocking somebody, it's made our problem more complex, because we have actually more decisions to make now. There's more options because we've got someone that can come out of their zone and go anywhere they want. So it would just be like a process of that all the way through. Okay, let's play for another 10 minutes. I try to make it simple. I often just base it on what's the scoreline. Here the level up concept is the team with the best accumulative goal difference, because you know, sometimes with kids you have one dominant team. It's always the same team leveling up. If you make it more goal difference, you might have a better chance of that not happening. But that's where the superpower becomes really important, because if your team's on level 4, my team is still on level 0, like, well, why haven't we used that superpower? You know, we need to keep using that power, because that's what's going to enable us to have to be more effective and get players out of their zones. As you can see here, like, just pick up the power. It's just a bib chucked on the floor. Like, when my team have possession, just pick up the power. And that means I can go anywhere. But there's millions of ways. It doesn't have to be that superpower. You can choose what you want with your superpower. So, and then the pauses, it's like, I might just need to skip a level because this is really hard. Do you know what I mean? I just want to cheat. I'm fed up with this level. Like, might want to change, like I said about the boy changing the angle of the goal to make it hard for his opponent. I'm specific with that, by the way. With all of these, as you can see, I specify what they are. If you leave it, I find if you leave it up to the kids, if this is a new way of coaching for them, they'll come up with just inappropriate stuff sometimes, and it just becomes not the game anymore. Like, it maybe once they get better at this, they can start to be actually, they can offer their ideas, but not at the start for me. I tell them, so it's skip a level, or it's modify the playing area. So here we might modify the goals, we might modify the area sizes. A clue is coaching. So like, whenever I use this, by the way, nobody asks, like, the clue is always the least popular thing, which I don't know if that's suggestive of my coaching skills or not, but funny how the kids actually usually don't want to hear from the coach. But if and when they utilize that, we'd be ready. You know, we should have been observing, we should be noticing what's happening, and then when they ask for a clue, we can coach them. And then challenge is like, it's actually, how do we make this harder for us? You know, we're on level 4, they're on level 0. Like, we actually want to make this harder for ourselves. So again, coming back to the concept of space in this game, actually, we're only going to play in 2/3 of the area when we're in possession. That's your challenge. You can't use one of the thirds when in possession. That's quite hard, because like now the other team can be more compact. So it's stuff like that. And I'd say to the kids as well, you can only use, in this 90-minute session, you can only use them once. So then they have to be thinking, oh, okay, when do I need that? When do I need that? And it becomes like quite interesting, to be honest, to get to understand them as individuals and how they think, how they then collectively make their decision, and just to know their train of thought's quite interesting.
Cool. Trav, anything else on that? Otherwise, Lewis had a question there. Trav, can you hear me?
Hey, Amy.
Hello.
It's a very interesting concept, really fascinating. Because I'm just trying to think in my head of when I was a kid, when you're playing a video game, you just wanted more and more and more and more of it.
Yeah.
And I suppose this sort of strategy is just trying to, you always wanted that stretch, that challenge to keep going, and you got better at the game by doing it by yourself over time.
Yeah.
Without, as you said, no coach in. I didn't have my mum or dad over the top of me saying, "Oh, you should, jump over that or go through that door or kill that bad guy," sort of thing. So you do it by yourself. It's a big thing. So I'm really liking the idea behind it, and I can also see how you probably come up against, like you gave the example of heads of coaching in football that are so sort of, because our culture is, we've always done tactical practices with football, and that's what we've done for so long. But actually, the best players are that really make it all the way to the top, of the decision makers that that can, as you said, unlock a defense, do something different, can work out what the opposition are doing at the same time. So I'm really on board with the concept. What I'm trying to just, can you give us some examples around? So, have you worked out how you're sort of checking whether that learning to learn is taking place over time with kids over weeks, months?
It's a great question.
The year or whatever it may be. So, like, I'm thinking in my head as a football coach, if you strip back to what a lot of so-called football coaches are sort of will say, well, I can look at that. Let's take a technical thing. I can see that player is good at turning on the ball, or I can see that the team can play out from the back. So that's in my head as a coach, or in a lot of coaches' heads, that's a tick. But what's the sort of things that you're using to go, well, actually, this player is getting better at their decision making and their learning? What's the steps that you're using, or the tools that you're using to check it over time, sort of thing?
Great question. Really important question as well. So we're in the middle of a longitudinal, about 18-month study with the Boys Academy to try and measure how their game understanding has changed throughout that season, based upon times in which they use this approach, times in which they won't, based upon like methods of data collection, which basically gets inside their head and makes their thinking obvious. It's called applied cognitive task analysis, which is basically you get them to talk through how they approach and solve the problem, their actual strategies and processes used in their head. So that's from a qualitative point of view. From a quantitative point of view, over time, the coaching team of that group are the ones measuring their levels of game understanding based upon a 9-element criteria that the coaching world a few years ago in the 2020 study said is game understanding, and it's a 5-point criteria, and they basically will quantitatively score players based upon their responses in the interviews, based upon the problems they're talking about, and that's interspersed, by the way, with multiple focus groups, context, because you can't actually say, because of this approach, we've become really clever, because as we all know in coaching, there's multiple factors that can or can't influence kids' understanding and abilities. So you always got to take that, whatever the findings are in the end, you've got to take that with a pinch of salt, because actually there's so much that can also influence, which is why we want those focus groups to get the context. But great question. I think aside from that research process, I think as a coach on the grass, if you yourself wanted to like anecdotally, is that a word? Measure players' learning and progress and stuff using this approach, I would suggest that be really good at noticing the conversations that players have during the game with each other around, the pauses, the level ups, etc. On an individual level, try to notice away from the ball. So, you know, take the game design I just showed you. If I'm locked in, but our team have the ball, and the superpower is right there, have I even noticed that I can just pick up that power, by the way, and now I'm unlocked? So have I even noticed? But then if I have noticed, watch the person with the power. Don't watch what the ball, watch the person with the power. See what they do with that power. And then when they have to drop the power, because their team's lost possession, where do they drop it? It's the little nuances. You can just pick up little nuances in individual player actions because of the way the game is designed.
Yeah.
In addition to the conversations and that you can also listen.
No, yeah.
I hope that answers the
That's
question.
great. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Fascinating stuff. No, yeah, it does. It does. You know, setting up little things where they're talking to each other and strategizing and noticing the conversations, and then trying to look at what they're doing away from the ball. Yeah, two key things for you know, we don't here on the Isle of Man. It's more grassroots level sort of coaching. We don't have the time, space, and things to do the qualitative discussions with players. Well, certainly not at this moment in time, but I mean, those two things are definitely very, very, very helpful. So thank you for that.
No, and it's the game design. It kind of promotes assessment in a really cool, meaningful way. That it's like James G talks about the game is just ongoing assessment. It's just ongoing learning and ongoing opportunities for kids to be assessed without having to take an exam at the end, because it's level ups, because it's you're practicing so many different skills, so many different strategies. It's all together, all combined, you know. So yeah.
Cool.
No,
Great stuff. Great stuff, Lewis. Thanks for that.
Great stuff.
Connor, Claire, Simon, where are you? Simon, you got yourself on mute. Go on.
Yeah, all it is really, Amy, is I'm with Lewis that, you know, playing video games even now at our age is great. You know, you still love it. But one of the things that I'd like to ask you really is, as you go up the age groups, how do you keep them engaged? And also, does your delivery approach change? Or if it does, how does it?
Yeah, it's a good question. So about 3 years ago, I was challenged to utilise this approach with Fulham boys under 18s and Wimbledon boys under 18s. Obviously, both very high level of player. I'd never coached boys under 18 academy teams before. So I was like, well, this is, and if anyone knows Steve Wigley, an ex-football manager, Premier League football manager, known for his quite old school methods, which work, by the way, but he's very, very old school in his approach. He was the under 18s manager at that time. So, wow, imagine this, some 30-year-old blonde young girl coming in, coaching his players for a session using some really weird coaching approach. He was great, by the way, like he just left me to it. But my challenge was, I need to test this. Does this work in an environment where you're working with, you know, players who are on the cusp of professional contracts? And yeah, it's 100% you have to adapt to your behaviours. You have to adapt the language. I'm not going to say, yeah, boys, you can earn a superpower. Like, they're just going to laugh at me. Like, I'm not going to say the word superpower. Like, but you can still explain the game without using that language, you know? And I think I used power up. I think I just said, if you pick up this bid, you can power up, you can do da-da-da. Like, and they were fine. They were like, oh yeah, I get that. Yeah. Because they play loads of video games, so they kind of got it straight away, to be fair. So yeah, I think my language changed. And the emphasis on winning probably became more explicit in the way I was framing up the game. You know, it's competitive. It's they get really competitive. You can imagine they probably get competitive in every type of practice at that level, but this probably brought it out more. And also it brings out frustration, which is great. A G calls that pleasant frustration. It's that sense of you can't get past this level. And you're like, for God's sake, I can't keep dying. Like, you get so annoyed, but you try again. And you can visibly see some of the players at that, especially at the older age groups, really competitive, getting fuming. They're fuming that their mate, like the other team, have like leveled up again, or like, and that's what I love about it, because you want that from that type of player, don't you, in that type of environment?
No, that's great. Just listening to you there, Amy. You know, you actually went into your flow of leveling up, you know, and change. You know, you just got so passionate about it. It was great. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I do get overexcited.
That's what we want. That's what we want. I'll throw one in. We've discussed superpowers before, Ames, quite a couple of times now. You've told me off a couple of times as well. I'm not going to lie. So just to give you some backgrounds on those conversations, I used to use superpowers to either support children or athletes, and or to try to stretch them. Okay, so I'll give you a very quick example. So play game, touch rugby, yeah, is adventures touch, yeah, where Thorn gets an extra ball, which is his hammer. Okay, for some of you I might be speaking in a different language, but anyway, bear with me. So Thor gets an extra ball, which is a hammer. Every time that person drops that hammer, the team loses either a point or loses some territory, or something happens around that. And then this person has to explore lots of things with one hand and all sorts of things. Just picture yourself playing touch rugby with a ball in your hand. Yeah, it's going to be in the way. And perhaps I've got Iron Man, and this girl can actually zap people as she runs along. Okay, and she's got 3 zaps, and then she can get touched and something happens in that breakdown. Okay, so just to give you some context on some conversation that we had with Amy before. Now I'll leave it there, and I'll let you wallop me again. Come on.
Well, the first thing that sprung to mind, which isn't what we spoke about, but I'll come on to that, is the need to keep it simple. Because I feel like, and I've done this, and this was the learning I took from it, is the game has to be understandable. We can't have so many different things going on in this game, because then the kids are just baffled a little bit sometimes, and then like people break rules by accident, and then like it's not really the game anymore, because it's carnage. So we kind of need that simplicity in the game design. Like, as the examples I showed you, I think they're like, if I can cope, if these 6-year-olds get it, like, I think they must be pretty simple. And like, yeah, just keeping it looking like the game as much as you can, I suppose. But yeah, so that was the first thing that struck me, because I was like, as you were speaking, Brian, I was like, God, there's a lot for me to be thinking about here, like if I was playing it. And I get that. It's in a video game, there is lots of stuff, but that happens gradually. You know, unlock this and use this. It happens over a long period. So if you use this, think of the longevity of your game. To start with, just think of the simpleness of your game. But actually, as the kids get really used to it, yeah, it might, in 3 months' time, when you've played it 25 times, it might look actually much more busy. But yeah, the coming back to the superpower stuff. So I think it's the coach's strength is sometimes our weakness, right? Where we want to help. We're like, we want to help people. We can notice some stuff and we want to help you. But it can be a weakness with this, because you don't want to keep stepping in, and you don't want to give someone a superpower because actually you think that it could help, because that ain't about what we think. It's about that player and that team. Do we realise that we could benefit from that power? Can we actually find out how to earn it? You know, like whether it's like in the fast feet in Sonic, it's hidden in the tree. Or like, but actually on my game design, it was a bib on the floor that I had to be alert enough to pick up when my team got the ball. So it has to be earnable. And then like, yeah, so it's about them. But I do say that with a pinch of salt, because when I'm working with those 6-7-year-old boys, of course there's times I'm not standing there in silence. I'm not just like redundant from the whole process. Like I'm naturally still going to be interacting with the kids, encouraging them. Like I might even pull them out and ask them some stuff and do some coaching as well. You know, so as coaches, we're going to mix and match bits and bobs anyway, aren't we, within our overall session? I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. No dramas, Connor. I think you're already gone. So yeah, no dramas. You're gonna go. Simon is asking here in the chat, Amy, if you do ever give yourself a superpower.
That's the whole point. You do give yourself. You always give yourself, right? So like, if you think about Sonic, you are basically giving yourself that superpower. I don't know if I'm saying Sonic like everyone's played it, by the way, but I don't know if you have, but like, yeah, it's all about you give yourself. You don't wait for it's not for the coach to give you it. That's the whole point. I have to earn it. I have to notice it's available and earn it and then use it myself.
Cool, cool. You know Prince of Persia? Have you heard of Prince of Persia before?
No.
That was my first video game. I'll send you a screenshot. I'm a few years older than him anyway. That was my first on my PC. Who else got somebody for Amy before I get melancholic about my age again?
I don't know if silence is a good or a bad thing, by the way.
Go for it, Trev.
I've got another one. So you've been dropping the hints in with the sort of key influences within your club or your team. You want to try and bring in this new approach. You've got people on board. If you're going to try it, is it a case of jumping in with 2 feet and living it for an extended period of time, or is it something that you can dip in and out of intermittently? How's the sort of best way to sort of start using it and integrating it?
I don't think there's a best way. I think you got to make those. You'll know your environment, right? I guess it's how much value does the club place on good learners, decision makers, problem solvers. If they say this is actually a really important part of our player development, then I think it gives you a little bit more of a opportunity to use it more. If it's actually not regarded, if actually in our environment it's all about technical execution and physicality, then you might probably going to find it a bit harder to keep using it. But I also think that it doesn't have to be a whole session. So actually you might just play like that game I showed you, for example, could just be the first 20 minutes of the session for every session this month. You know, so like, because then it's that save progress, come back to it. But then we still got the rest of the session to work on whatever it is that we would usually do as well. And I don't think there's a best way. I just think it's how much value do you place on metacognition and all of that stuff that we said. I did use that game, or not that game, a different game of that group of boys during the World. You remember when it was was it the Euros or the World Cup? 2019, summer of 19. Anyway, it was an England competition, and we had training twice a week all the way through the summer, June, July, August, September, and I used it with them, the same game, twice a week for 90 minutes all the way through. Because the game changes, right? As we said before, the start version of the game actually evolves as you level up, as you use the superpowers, as you change it, as you pause. They're loving it. They would, because it's football. It's just football games, isn't it? But with a twist, you know.
Amy, would you ever level down? So.
Yes.
Because games.
Question.
I think back to my experiences of games in the 80s playing on the ZX Spectrum. You played Manic Miner, you die, you're back to the start every time. You couldn't save progress and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, you can't
get through about 10 levels and then you've got to go back to level 1.
Yeah, No, it's a really, really good question. And at the start of because I'm interpreting from James G, like this is conceptually, I'm trying to understand what he's talking about. And what he speaks about is the idea that in a video game, you can't lose what you've already achieved. And that's why people become a little bit more risk taking as they're tackling the next problem. So in Sonic, you know, look, please say someone has played Sonic on this call.
A little bit. I was more of a Amiga man than a Sega man.
Well, you know, they've got the bell. If you run past the bell, if you die, but you've hit the bell,
Go back to that point.
Go back to that point. You have to go all the way back to stuff. So, like, that's what G's saying is if you've, you know, you can't lose some stuff, which makes you more risk taking.
Yeah.
But I also know that a lot of video games don't have that.
Yeah.
And actually, there is an element of losing stuff.
Yeah.
And so
you get that in rugby, don't you? In rugby, when the referee calls penalty, all of a sudden the team just goes for crazy things because, you know, it'll get a call back for the penalty once they knock it on or whatever.
Yeah, like, I don't know rugby, so I'm just going to nod and agree. So, yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, so basically, like, I was thinking, like, for many years with this, thinking, no, you can't level down. But about maybe 2 years ago, my thinking changed. And I actually think you can level down because you've got the saving progress principle. So actually, it's designing a game where kids get to that bell that I was talking about. Where are they going to put their bell? You know, I might level down from 5 to 4, but it's like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Like, I can't, like, at least I can't get below 4 because that's where my save point is. So yeah, I think you can. And that was actually, you know, I said I did that thing with the boys during the World Cup all the way through the summer. That particular game design had the level down element. And that was, I think, one of the aspects of why it could go on for so long. And it was actually so brilliant to see because, you know, you could level down, but then you could level back up and it became really strategic.
Cool. Simon, did you have something? Your mic's open.
Yeah, I was just thinking then when Trevor said, you know, level down, I play a game called The Bank of Simon. And basically what you do is you play a game 5 against 5, but you have 1, 2, and 3 where if you score 1 goal, you get a choice of, do you want to play without a keeper? And if you choose that, it's like a superpower, you lose your goal. So it comes back to 0-0. Number 2 is you get one of their players. So you've got to score 2 goals, get one of their players. They go down to 4, you're 6. They lose all the goals, so you're back to 0-0. Or number 3, you can basically rush keeper, get one of their players, and also you get a goal. Now, what happened in one of the games, they were winning 2-1. They chose to lose all, you know, basically take one of their players without consulting each other. Just as you said, Amy, and next minute, the other team scored. So they were up the next minute, the whistle went.
Oh.
So it was just, you know, basically all the kids screaming at me and asking me, and these were under 16 girls playing it, you know, so it was, you know, it's just the same kind, you know, it was brilliant. It was just to watch, but
yeah,
the communication wasn't there. But believe me, the next game they played, guess every time they scored, into a quick huddle they went.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and that's the question, what should we do?
So many outcomes, isn't there? So many outcomes, you know, there's social outcomes, there's the psych stuff, there's the tech that's happening anyway, like, and it's, you know, we speak so much around like players being recognizing the game state. Just recognize the game state. What's the score and how long's left? Like, what are the opposition like? Do we even get kids to notice who they're playing against, or do we just keep focusing on us? Like, because imagine if you were playing a video game and you never considered the opponent, which is basically the game. If you just kept making decisions based upon you and never thought about them, you wouldn't progress.
But Amy, just before when I asked about do you get a superpower? I'm not on about as a player, as a coach.
Oh, right, as a coach.
Do you give yourself a superpower?
Why? Why?
Why not? Because one team might be struggling, and then you could turn around and say, okay, you're not working it quite out. You might need a bit of a hand. I'm going to use the superpower for myself.
I've never thought about that, so I probably have to. I've never thought ever, to be fair, never thought about that. So I probably need to have some time to like work out, because you have to. The idea is you would earn the power. So what would the coach? What would? I'm struggling to see the benefit, because if for example they pause and they say clue, wouldn't that be our chance?
Well, they might, they might just carry on if it's in the. I'm going back to Sega. When you were the main character, he was the be all and end all, wasn't he? Basically,
yeah,
and if a team's struggling with it, you could actually use a superpower to help them out.
But then isn't that you as the coach trying to interject and help and trying to, as Juan was doing before, like, isn't that you going, oh, I want to control this, I want to do something to help, rather than just going.
But you don't have to, do you?
You're giving yourself I think this is the ongoing, I genuinely believe this conversation is brilliant, because it's the ongoing battle I think a lot of coaches have with this approach, is like, how much can I do and say versus when do I not? It's hard, like, especially as I say with those boys, they're like 6 and 7. So yeah, you're right. Sometimes I have to actually just tell them and do stuff and interject.
Yeah, I'd give myself a superpower so I couldn't just interject.
You just have your favorite time on. That's probably why. A quick one on that. Joe Herman, he talks about those coaching moments and those interventions in inside coaching. Good book, really good book if you're looking for a book. Aim, I'm afraid we're going to wrap it up quickly. I know you've got to shoot another call. I've got another one at 3 o'clock as well, and we've got to get on with our days. Come on, his host, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire before, Trevor Lee Christian. Over to you.
You love my middle name, don't you, Juan? So yeah, Amy, that was absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much indeed for giving up an hour of your afternoon to come and share that with us. Some fantastic concepts there, and it's really sort of got the creative juices flowing, I think, in a lot of people there, judging by the amount of involvement we have from everyone, asking questions and having conversations. Everyone's really valued that hour massively. So thank you very much indeed.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
No, the pleasure is ours for sure. Juan, you put together a fantastic lineup of people, mate. We had Sergio and now we've had Amy. Sergio was very hard to top. Amy, I think you've leveled up there with Sergio.
I know Sergio, and there's no way my presentation was better than his. He's amazing.
So but keep that to yourself. But obviously, we'll give you a quick lowdown on who we've got next, guys. So we've got Stuart Armstrong next, I think, and that is going to be on Friday the 5th of March, so not long at all. I think that's a week on Friday, isn't it? So it's going to be 6 o'clock in the afternoon. So before you go out for your end of week pints, because we can do that in the Alaman, you get along to Stuart Armstrong's talk, and he's going to be looking at ditching those drills, I think we've got there, Juan. So really looking forward to see what Stuart's got to say. And after that, we'll be on to Sarah Kelleher, then Richard Cheatham and Suzanne Brown. So we're really rattling through things now. We're nearly going to be coming to an end of our 10 webinar series. So thanks for tuning in, guys, and tell your friends to come along, get your coaching colleagues to get signed up, and it'll be great to see more people benefiting from all this fantastic information that we're getting. So thanks very much. Over to you, Juan.
Cheers, Trev. Amy, do you have some word of wisdoms and final blessings to leave us with?
Be curious and skeptical. Keep questioning it.
There you go. I love that. Open your mics. Send your love to Amy. Great to see you all. We'll see you a week on Friday.
Thank you.
Everyone, thanks for having me.
Cheers.
Thank you very much.
See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
See you.